The days are long, but the years are short.
In the Howard family that is disordered, is messed up, is something that I've termed violent justice. I call it violent justice because there's a sense when you're in it that you feel like you're doing what's just. You feel like you're doing what's right. And the feeling of I'm right justifies any violent act you would do. If you go way back in the Howard line, our family is the family that you've heard about. And it's not limited to the Howard family, but after the Civil War, there were Howard brothers, one who fought for the North, one who fought for the South. And out of a sense of violent justice, one of my great-great-uncles killed his brother. Violent justice. My grandfather was concerned that my dad was going to be a sissy. Do you know what a sissy is? A boy that's just not macho enough, just not strong enough. And so there was a bully in the neighborhood, and one time my grandfather observed my dad running away from the bully to get safe at home. And my grandfather stood at the screen door of the house as my dad was running and the bully was chasing him. And my grandfather locked the screen door and watched the bully beat up my dad right at the step, to make a violent point, that he was sure that it was not right that his son would be. No son of mine will ever be a sissy. I have memories of feeling terrorized in my home growing up. Actually, one story I told to all of my family one day, I was a little boy, and I said, hey, do you guys remember the time that Dad tied us up to the poles in the basement because one of us had wet the bed? Ha, 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 do you remember that? And they all laughed. And they said, that never happened. But I thought, what kind of boy believes that happened? A boy who's been terrorized. I believed it happened because I do remember times very clear of being screamed at, who peed on the seat? I've told you guys to lift the seat. And out of fear, I would raise my hand and say, it was me. He said, get in here and clean that off. And I would go in and I'd take a piece of toilet paper. He'd say, not toilet paper. I'd say, well, Dad, what do I clean it off with? And he'd say, your tongue. And I'd say, Dad, no. He'd say, get down there. And only at the very last minute when my tongue was out over the urine, only then he would say, that's enough. Violent justice. I'm right. I'm going to make my point. And I can use violence to get the point across. I could tell you story after story, and it wasn't just from my dad. It was from 4 older brothers. It was being locked in closets. It being locked in a closet with another brother where we would have to break glass to get out. It was having a brother jump over a table telling me he was going to kill me. It was being sexually abused. It was just over and over. The point is, I came to the conclusion that this world is not a safe place. This world is not a safe place. I concluded that home is where you're supposed to feel safe. And I would remember going into my home and feeling terror in my home. And I thought, if home is this safe and these people are supposed to love me, what's going to happen if I get outside of my home? I remember being by the dumpster in 5th grade weeping because I was afraid of everybody at school. And so I would just go to the dumpster and cry by myself. I just was terrorized by life. So what do you do if you're that broken in your home growing up? You make a conviction that what happened in my home, it will never happen in my home. But what that turns out to be is more violent justice. That's how the patterns pass on. I remember the first time I screamed at Sharon. She just stared at me like, who is this monster and why are you screaming at me? I've told many of you the story of the time that my oldest son, Caleb, he was probably 4 years old, disobeyed me over something, and we had bunk beds, and we were in Ambato, Ecuador, and I picked him up and I squeezed his arm so tight and I put him as high as I could over my head. And I said, you will not disobey me. And I put him down on the top bunk and he immediately crumpled over and he said, Daddy, my back, my back. Do you know what I think? Every time my oldest son complains about a bad back, you see, in the pain of my home growing up, my love became disordered. And rather than believing that I could give my love to a God who would care for me, I made a determination that I better take care of myself because nobody else will. And if that means I have to be controlling or a perfectionist, or if I always had to perform well to make everybody happy, I will do whatever it takes to take care of myself. Disordered love cripples a life. Story number 3.
So I want to tell you a little bit about young man I had as a student as my first full-time youth pastor job. His name was John. So John was, he had some addiction issues. He had some other stuff that was going on with him. And there were times where in youth group settings, we would just have like verbal and visual standoffs because he said, you can't tell me to sit down. I said, well watch me because I'm in charge here. Like, you're going to sit down. So we had these challenges. And so that first year that I was there, we took a trip as a youth group all the way out for a youth convention to San Diego. And so John went with us. We were brave and we took him. So we took John all the way out to San Diego, and things were going all right. Like the conference was good, and then John kind of got a little attitude right before one of the general sessions, and he just started spouting off. He's like, well, they're using the wrong translation of the Bible. Like, this music stinks. Like, I hate this room. Just kept going on and on about all his opinions about things. And then one of our leaders stood up and turned around and kind of powered up on him and said, would you just shut up? Well, you can't tell me what to do. Who do you think you are? And she was like, well, I'm the pastor's wife. This is not my wife. This was the senior pastor's wife that went on the trip. So you can't, you're gonna sit down. He says, you can't tell me what to do. And so he gets up and he walks out. And he starts walking, and I'm like, hey, what happened? Because I had just come in, and so I got the story, and I said, all right, well, I'll go get him. So as I'm on my way to go get John, there's a little hallway area, like between the two buildings. There was the convention center and then the hotel. So when he came out of the convention center into that alleyway, he took off. So here I am, new full-time youth pastor. John's missing. We're in San Diego. That was terrifying. Right? So we've got John's disordered love that says, I'm not going to follow authority. I can't deal with it. And then suddenly mine pops up. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Like, I've got a runaway teenager in one of the largest cities in America. How am I going to go find him? So we got on the phone to the police. And they said, oh, okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for him. We'll track him down. But while you wait, you need to get on the phone with the parents, and you need to get some dental records just in case he turns up dead somewhere. What? Are you serious? I'm thinking, oh, man, I got to call this kid's parents right now. They're gonna massacre me. Like, they trusted me with their kid, and I lost him. I lost him in San Diego, of all places. So I get on the phone and I talk to his dad, and his dad actually was very gracious. He said, "Listen, we knew it was a risk to send him, so don't worry. We'll get the dental records over to the police. We're with you. We support you. We trust you." So it was like a nice calming voice in the midst of all my disorder, because I'm in one part I'm crying for John, and the other part I'm crying for myself because I'm thinking, how am I supposed to do this? This is crazy. It's the only kid I ever lost at a youth event, just so you know. But John disappeared for about 3 hours, and then he showed back up. We were all freaking out. We were all wondering what to do. We're just waiting. Police are looking for him. Turns out he knew where a mall was, and so he went to a movie. Some of you are like, well, just text him, find out where he's at. Well, this is before iPhones were even invented. It was a dream that something like that would happen. So this is way back in those days. And I can tell you, that was a very challenging thing, a very sobering thing to think, man, we have to care for kids, and that can just blow your mind up. And then, you lose a kid, and so you saw kind of his disordered explosion just kind of went across our entire group, and it just kind of rippled out into all of these different things. And I'll tell you just another little story. Tell you of a kid named Travis that he was a student leader of mine. And one of the things I do when I train student leaders is I take them through some standards for themselves. We take them through standards for parties, standards for movies, dating, just different set. And so he set a standard for himself in high school that says, I'm not going to date until I get to college. I said, all right, man, we're going to hold you accountable to that standard. That's a great standard. He's like, yeah, if I start dating, he's like, there's nowhere I can take it. It doesn't make any sense for me to do that. So he writes the standard down. It's all good. 2 weeks later, some girl says, hey, Travis, you're pretty cute. Want to go out? Well, what happened to his standard? Whew, gone. Starts making out with this girl. Things start going a little bit bad. They start fighting a lot. And then a couple weeks later, it's over. They broke up. He said, I don't need that standard anymore. I think this girl's more attractive than my dedication to what I said I was going to do. They just broke it up. And they are, as far as I know, they're still bitter enemies to this day because Travis married one of her friends. Right? You start to see some of those things. And we could tell you countless other stories of disordered love where teenagers are so focused on getting so many likes or so many different retweets or whatever, and they just will be devastated if they don't reach a higher number than their friend. You guys get to see that on your Facebook feeds. It'll say you 35 people. I got 35. Oh, I only got 20. I must not be good. So the disordered love, it's set on something else other than God's approval. It's set on the number of clicks. Right? They turn their lives into what's called clickbait. We could tell you about the stories of kids that take nude pictures of themselves and then, send it to somebody, and then that gets resent to somebody else, and then they find out suddenly they're in trouble with the police for creating, storing, and distributing child pornography. We could tell you all the stories about the kids that have lost scholarships because of things they've posted online. It's a lot of disordered love. So as Nate said, when it happens and something is set on something that becomes greater than God, it becomes a false worship. And it just destroys lives. So significant stuff. So that's a couple of stories for you about disordered love.
God invites us to give our highest love to Him because it's only in Him and knowing God. It's only in knowing the greatness of His love, knowing Him as Father, knowing His goodness, knowing His strength. That's the only place that our heart finds a safe place for our love. It's in loving God that we're freed from the disaster of disordered love. Therefore, if you're going to be diligent about something during your long days and the short years, be diligent about training the next generation to love God with all their hearts. Two things. This whole thing about disordered love messing up lives, it has happened to all of us. We told these stories because these are every man's stories. We could all have the microphone this morning and we could all tell stories of how that's happened to us. And the truth is, we've all done it to others as well. So we all have that in common. But it's also true that the messed up state is not final. And it's not hopeless. And it's not the end of the story. Sharon and I have talked repeatedly about the way that my background has actually made me the person that I am. There's a lot of really good things about my life, formed in my life, passions that I have, precisely because of the pain of my past. I am who I am because God wove a tapestry in my life through a lot of that messed up stuff. God redeems everything. Everything. And that's my big hope. But we want to make it clear what we're aiming at, and then we want to say this. There are so many resources to help you along the way. You do not have to walk this path alone. You do not have to go it alone. There are so many things to help you, like community, like to not live in isolation, like to learn to tell your story and to hear others, like what we call the 4 foundations, like to be intentional in your parenting or in your investment in the next generation, like a parent summit. So I applaud you for being here. That's why we're here. And that's why we will, at our breakout sessions, try to break it down a little bit more so that you can say, okay, what are some specifics I can give myself to? So let me pray for us, and let's ask God to help us as we walk through the challenging thing that we have before us as parents. Lord, the days are long. We get tired. And so we ask for refreshing, and we ask for hope as we walk through this day. And the truth is also that the years are short, and it's so easy for us to pass on either negative generational patterns. It's so easy for us to aim for something else that would be disordered. So would you teach us, Lord, as older people looking to invest in the next generation, would you teach us what does it look like to inspire in the next generation that they would love God with all of their heart? What does that look like? Teach us how. And even in these breakout sessions, as we get ready to go to those, would you meet us in those places? So come and help us, I pray, in Jesus' name.
All of our talks on the